I'd like to welcome everybody to the October 2nd meeting of the Revere Conservation Commission. First item on the agenda is a roll call. Member Bluestein.
Here.
Member Laval.
Here.
Member Camerata.
Here.
Member Rahoney.
Here.
Member Cerboni.
Here. Joe James is absent.
And I'm E.D. DeSantis, Chair of the Concom. Vice Chair Joseph James is absent. I know he had a late appointment. He said he was going to try and make it. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of August 7th, 2013. Do I have a motion?
I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for a notice of intent. DEP file 0610641, 15 Undyne Ave, construction of a single-family home. Henry Pepe, is there anybody here representing Mr. Pepe? Come to the microphone. It looks like it's on.
Yep.
State your name.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Luke Roy, LJR.
1 second before you speak, Luke. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Mr. Luke Roy is here representing the applicant. The floor is yours, Mr. Roy.
Thank you. We have prepared the notice of intent before you today on behalf of the applicant, Henry Pepe. Essentially, this notice is for construction of a new dwelling on the property, 15 Undyne Avenue. The reason it falls within the jurisdiction requiring a notice of intent is that it's within 100 feet of the seawall at that location. The property line is approximately 65 feet at the closest point. It is outside of the 100-year flood zone. It's in a Zone X shaded at that location. There is some work that's begun on the site, and erosion controls are in place.
Richie,
I believe that the commission has.
Andy, 1 minute. Richie's.
Oh.
You need to speak up and speak directly into the microphone.
Yes.
As good as the others.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
That's essentially the proposal. At this
Yeah, if you can
time.
just get a little bit closer to move the microphone closer to you. There you go.
Okay. Got
Thanks.
it. Thank you. That's essentially the proposal before you for this notice of intent, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead, Jim.
The site map is not what I'm typically used to seeing for a notice of intent filing, the detail on the site map. I think it's very limited with regard to where the building is going to be situated on the property, and I'm not sure how this can't be impacted by land subject to coastal storm flowage or within a flood zone. And I'm also wondering if this might be subject to Chapter 91 jurisdiction for filled tidelands.
According to the flood maps, it is outside of it's actually surrounded by a flood zone, but it's on a slightly higher elevation than the surrounding areas, so it is outside of the flood zone on the current FEMA maps.
And you've evaluated this location for land subject to coastal storm flowage?
As far as the resource areas and the zones that we have available to look at on the flood maps, I don't see that it's within that.
Yeah, land subject to coastal storm flowage is a 100-year floodplain. And after they built rebuilt the seawall in the early 90s, a good section along Broad Sound Ave was taken out of the flood zone. So the only active jurisdictional interest here, as Mr. Royce said, within 100 feet of coastal bank, which in this case is the wall,
Right.
or under the Revere bylaw within 100 feet of land subject to coastal zone flowage or the 100-year floodplain, being the same. So it is not subject to the requirements under building and land subject to coastal storm flowage. It's on the current maps, new maps to be effective November 15th. It's not even on the new maps. There are areas in the city where the coastal floodplain is being expanded. If you look at the current maps, where the high school is currently situated, on the current maps, it's a 500-year floodplain. That moves into a 100-year floodplain with the new map issuance. The biggest changes I see along the coast are increases in the flood and the base flood elevation, both along this area and along Point of Pines. There are increases, in some cases, 6 to 9 feet. Now, this should have been filed before they started construction, no question about it. The only issues I had when I was down there was really cleanliness of the site.
Right.
Mr. Bluestein?
Just one other concern. In addition to the site cleanliness, I think we discussed at the site visit about the concrete driveway that's on the plan using a pervious paving system for that driveway. Was that discussed on Saturday?
Yes, it was discussed with Bruce Campbell, who represented the owner at the site visit on Saturday. I've drafted a order of conditions to be voted, and one of the requirements is that there not be any new impervious paving put on the property. Such things as permeable concrete, paving stones with sand joints, crushed stone, crushed seashells. Would be allowed, but that's not allowed. And the other thing we asked for is that downspouts from the roof be infiltrated to the extent possible. I think those are conditions that are easily achievable.
Yes, I agree.
For the homeowner. Anybody else? This is a public hearing. Anybody in the audience can speak on this project if they so choose to, either in favor or against. If I see nobody wishing to speak, motion to close the public hearing and issue the order.
I'll make a motion. Close.
I'll second.
We got a motion by Joseph Laval, a second by member Camerata.
Oh, Andy did. Danny, that's all right.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing and issuing the order as drafted.
Aye.
Any opposed? So voted. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll sign it. I've got to copy it, and I'll send it to Mr. Pepe.
Correct.
For recording.
Do you require the slips?
Yes, I would like to have those, please. For proof of Okay, thank you.
Yes, Andy.
Next item on the agenda is a vote of certificate of compliance for 24 Mermaid Ave. Mermaid Ave Condominium Trust. Mr. Siciliano is here representing the trust. We had a site visit this past Saturday and found everything was in order, in conformance. If anybody has any questions for Mr. Siciliano, no questions, simple vote. I have a motion?
I so moved, Mr. Chairman. Everything looked good up there. Pointed out the breakthrough windows and the doors.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Dan?
Although I was not in attendance, I perhaps should let it get back to Danny, since he did
Okay.
attend. You have the floor, Dan.
I second the motion. The proponent suited our request. So.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Voted in the affirmative. Take that one back with you. Next item on the agenda is vote enforcement action against 29th Air Ave Development LLC. We also had a site visit on Saturday. I had been to the site many times with Councilor Powers. Excuse me? Oh, they asked me to hold that off. I'm sorry. I should have said that. Yeah, because they weren't available to be here.
Mr. Chairman, I'm here from GTH Geoenvironmental, represent Oil.
Okay, well, you'll be next, sir, after we take care of this. Yeah, somehow I must have mixed up the agenda a little bit, because GZA is supposed to be on there. I've got your email with me, but I want to take up 29th Air Ave, if you don't mind. Thanks. So as I was saying, Phil was placed at 29th Air Ave. I did get a call, you can bring it over, from one of the abutters concerning that. Went down, took a look, and indeed Phil was being imported into the site in violation of both an existing order of conditions that was issued for work they did in 2010, and not filling the actual placement material and land subject to coastal storm flowage, the 100-year floodplain. So I've communicated with both their attorney and the engineer over the period of the last 3 weeks or so, and they tell me Phil would be removed, doing it on an informal basis, but that doesn't seem to be getting anywhere. So now we're going to begin the formal enforcement process. And as part of that, it's a vote of an enforcement order against the property owners, Mr. Anthony DeLuca of Castle Road, Nahant, 29th Air Ave Development Corporation, LLC, and Pamela Adavisian of Nahant. So I know there are some people in the audience that would like to speak on this.
Yes,
Janet, come on up.
yes.
The commission's all right with
Thank you.
allowing people to speak?
I'll be very brief. Hi, my name is Janet McNabb. I'm a resident of the Point Pines Riverside. What I have to say involves what I've actually seen. Is that better? Okay. So what I'd like to talk about is basically what I have seen with my own two eyes. I've gone by that site practically every single day. And what I've seen is large mounds of fill being brought in, huge. I'm not good with like weighing or telling you the weight of these large mounds, but they're very, very large. And I've also seen the piles being spread and being kind of tamped down with, I don't know what the name of the machine is. It looks like a bulldozer or something that's tamping it down. I went by today twice. I saw that the soil that was put there, the fill, has not been removed. It has been packed down very tightly, but it's the same fill that I've seen. And you can see the difference between the new fill and what the old ground looked like. So this person is not complying in any way with the order, and something should be enforced. As I'm not too familiar with the proceedings here, I was going to say a little bit about the statute and about how it might apply, but I guess I'm a little too early on that issue. So we're only dealing with enforcement at this point, I understand.
Right, and that applies to the Wetland Protection Act.
Yes.
Enforcement of the order of conditions, which has already been issued, they're in violation of the order of conditions.
Okay.
So now our regulations allow us to force them to remove the fill that they had otherwise said would be removed, but hasn't been removed. Okay. What I'm gathering is that you're in favor of this enforcement order.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
I have one question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Was there any pile remaining when you went by today? Was there or was it all tamped down?
It was all tamped down.
Okay.
As of by today, so.
Yeah, but even with that, when they had indicated to me they were removing, and it was a smaller pile than the original pile, and I could see it had been spread out. You could see the difference in the surface, that it was a newer dirt. And, just scratching with my heel, I could go down 6 to 8 inches in spots and see that there was a layer of 6 or 8 inches of new fill there, which needs to be removed. It needs to be moved to previous grade.
Yeah, so I went by 2 days ago, and about half the pile that was there on Saturday had already been tamped down, but I was just curious about how far along they were.
I go by there almost every day because I go to the park. So
Andy, through the chair.
Mr. Lavelle.
Just a point of information, ma'am. Do you happen to know, did you happen to see how many loads were taken, how many truckloads?
taken away.
No, brought to the site.
Yes. There were about four, I would say, four very, very large mounds of dirt. I think they might have been coming from the G&J yard because I saw big mounds of dirt at the G&J yard, but that's just a guess. That's,
Yeah, it's not so much about where it came from.
But, yeah, it's a guess as to where it might have come from, based on an observation.
It wasn't so much where it came from. I was wondering if you could tell how many truckloads. So you estimate 4 trucks?
I counted about 30 piles the first time I was down at the site.
Since we were there, Randy?
No.
This is before we had the site.
Could you equate a pile with a truckload?
Like a 10,
Yeah.
you could equate it with a 10-yard,
Yeah,
large truck, like a 10
yard or a trailer dump's 30 yards. So if it's
yeah.
a trailer dump, that's almost 1,000 cubic yards of material.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else would like to speak on this? Councilor Correggio?
Thank you very much. John R. Correggio, 30 Graves Road, Revere, Counselor at Large for the City of Revere. I'm here because I received several phone calls from the Pines area, Riverside section of Revere about fill being transported on that Thayer Avenue area. And there was a large amount of fill. There was numerous trucks. I observed it myself. How many, I really don't know. I don't know what type of fill it is or where it's coming from, but I'm here to support the neighborhood. They're very much concerned about all this fill being coming in there and disturbing the neighborhood with noise, trucks, and so I don't know what kind of action or what action the Conservation Commission is going to take, but I support in every which way the neighborhood to take some type of action to give the neighborhood some type of relief. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Like to speak, John?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, just to bring you up to speed on what's been happening down there in the past couple of months, part of it is under your jurisdiction, part of it isn't. I was called and informed that there would be a meeting at the Wharf Restaurant, the old Wharf Restaurant, about 2 months ago. Not by the developer, certainly, but by other parties. I went down there along with approximately 70 or 80 residents in the area. And they clearly were against the type of development that was proposed, 40 some odd units. And I myself was also, because several years ago I changed the zoning down there. It's an RA district. That particular site isn't, but the rest of Riverside is. And we eliminated the word special permit. So in the Point of Pines, the Grove section of Oak Island, and Riverside, you can no longer get a special permit to build a two-family or a multi-family dwelling. We also, when I was first elected, they were building two-family homes on 3,000 square foot lots in the city. We changed that. You can no longer build a two-family home on a 3,000 square foot lot. It was increasing the density in the city, the parking problems, filling up our school system, the whole 9 yards. With that said, about 3 weeks ago, I started receiving calls from residents down there who said they were, in fact, bringing fill onto the site. I drove down there a couple of hours later and saw this to be true. I immediately called Chairman DeSantis, who responded and met me down there, I believe it was the next day, if I'm not mistaken. We called for a police officer to come down there to make sure we had an incident report. And in my presence, Chairman DeSantis called the attorney, Mr. Cipolletta, and told him that bill would have to be removed. In my opinion, after seeing the attitude of the residents down there and then going to bring in at least 20 to 30 dump trucks with fill in it and throwing it there, that to me was clear arrogance on the part of the owners, developers, whatever you want to call them. So after Chairman DeSantis told them that they would have to remove the fill, it's my understanding they understood that clearly, the attorney did. 2 or 3 days later, I get a call saying they're spreading the fill out down there. And in fact, they were. I went down there. Right now, I would say, well, as of yesterday, I've been down there today, but as of yesterday, there was probably 6 to 7 to 8 inches of impacted fill on the rear part of that site. This area down there is a flood area. It's prone to flooding. Residents down there now are experiencing increases, which will go on for the next few years in their flood insurance. We certainly don't need people raising the land down there It topples over on the John Avenue, river, and sometimes even down on the other end. When the tide, when we have the right type of tide, or a bad tide, so to speak. So to bring in fill down there, and particularly without an order of conditions from this Conservation Commission at this time, to me it's just arrogance on the part of the developer, and I would ask this Conservation Commission to take the most stringent action they possibly can to have that removed from there, and if possible, find the developer for this violation. It's totally wrong. The residents don't want it. It's zoned, I believe it's zoned light industrial. There are certain things they can do down there, but they certainly cannot put 40-plus units down there without a special permit from the Revere City Council. And I will do everything in my power to make sure that that doesn't happen. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilor. Anybody else who would like to speak?
Yes, hi, I'm Robert Berg. I live in the Riverside neighborhood, lived there for 15 years. I think we have a wonderful neighborhood. The quality of life is high, and the majority of the residents I've spoken with are opposed to this 42-unit complex because they feel that it would decrease the quality of life in the neighborhood due to increased flooding and increased traffic. I think the majority of the residents agree that the boatyard needs to go, and they would welcome a small development, maybe half a dozen or possibly a dozen townhouses, but the neighborhood can't support that type of unit, and we're going to continue to oppose this. Now, perhaps the developers are aware of our opposition and they're just doing this out of spite. I don't know, but we're hoping that we can continue to try to push for something which is more reasonable and which would be good for the neighborhood instead of bad.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there is no proposal before us right now for redevelopment of 29 Thayer Ave. This is simply enforcement action for doing something in violation of the Wetlands Protection Act. It's also a violation of city ordinance, wetlands bylaw for one, zoning ordinance. You're prohibited even on sites that are not subject to flooding for importing more than 100 cubic yards of material. So we'll hopefully we'll vote and sign the enforcement order tonight. I will be coordinating and enforcement with the city solicitor, and hopefully I can get other department heads on board for the sections of the ordinances that they're responsible for and have a multi-pronged action to get the material removed. At some point in the future, I'm sure somebody, whether it's the current owner of the property or a future owner, will be coming forth with some sort of proposal to redevelop that site. It's a beautiful area down there, so I'd be surprised that nothing will ever happen down there, but, something that fits the character of the neighborhood and complies with the Wetlands Protection Act is what we need to ensure happens. Okay, so if there's nothing else on this, could I have a motion?
I'd like to make the motion, and I'd like to add a comment if I may.
Go right ahead. Well, why don't we...
First, I'll make a comment if I may.
Yeah, you can do it that way. Okay.
I think that what's happened has just been unbelievable, unacceptable, and it really should have never happened and gone this far. And anything you can do through this committee to relieve the neighbors and do the right thing, we should do it. And I just heard what your plan is, and it's going to happen, and it has to happen, and I appreciate that we are going to act on it because it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, we got to follow the steps and make sure everything is done properly.
Yeah, I just had a question, Mr. Chairman. How do we determine an accurate amount of fill to be removed from the site? We have estimates of trucks. It seems like it's ranging from 500 to 1,000 cubic yards. So maybe if we could get a consensus on how many trucks neighbors or abutters have seen or soil has been placed on the property.
Yeah, I think what is going to need to be done, and it should be a request of the property owner, perhaps the city actually hiring somebody to do it, is a survey to show what the existing adjacent grade levels are what the grade levels are within, it's about 100 foot by 100 foot square area, about 10,000 square feet. That appears to me that has been filled. So we can, I think it's pretty easily, because they didn't do any disturbance of the ground, they just put the fill there. So going down there with a shovel, and you could easily see the level it should be at.
Right, but it sounds like they've also had a compactor down there, so...
Yeah, but I don't think that would change the soil horizon that you would see if you put a shovel to it.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a second to Ann's motion?
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
What's the motion exactly? Form
to
9A?
issue the enforcement order.
And are we filing a Form 9A with?
Yes, I have that here.
Okay. And so have we talked to DEP at all?
We can, yes.
Okay. Because depending on the extent of the fill, there could also be other wetland resource areas affected, potentially riverfront area. I'm not sure if that is...
Yeah, I don't quite know. I didn't scale it on GIS to see how far it was from the riverfront area.
Yeah, and then depending on the grade, I mean, shellfish growing areas could be impacted.
Oh, yeah, if there's no erosion controls or anything like that. But I didn't see any evidence of erosion, because we haven't had much rain in the intervening 3 weeks either. We haven't had a heavy rain to be able to observe that.
Yeah, potentially salt marsh impacts, I know, proximity to the site, but...
Yes, that's right. It's a pretty level site. The whole area is pretty level. It's not like you got any sort of steep slope going down to the water.
Yeah, just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, but I'll file it with DEP too, but it doesn't necessarily mean DEP will take action.
Right.
I already had given them a copy of my informal letter, and I'm surprised I haven't heard from them, considering they had an enforcement action against this property 3 years ago, which caused them to file the notice of intent with us, and we granted the order of conditions on March 3rd of 2010, which they haven't complied with. And in fact, DEP felt that they were complying with DEP's order, and they zeroed out the fine. Originally, they were supposed to be hit with a $10,000 fine. So I was hoping that would come right back up. I mean, start talking money, people start to listen a little bit more. So I'll talk to the solicitor and heed his advice as far as the best way to approach with this. It's probably, I don't see it rises to the level of criminal action, but certainly a civil action, which means a filing in Suffolk Superior Court for violation of the Wetlands Protection Act, as well as the City of Revere bylaw.
Mr. Chairman, when we were at the site, some of the neighbors claimed, were there people parking cars in there and vehicles, trucks just parking there overnight also, or just concerned about the filth?
Well, there are a lot of vehicles that come and go.
Yes.
First of all, the trucks and the construction equipment is very heavy construction equipment.
Right.
And then you do see at night that there are a number of cars that are parked there, but it's not like a parking lot or anything like that. You'll see maybe 8 or 9 cars.
Right. But there were...
We're just going to deal with the filling.
Okay. Well, they had
Member
complained about
Camerata.
the vehicles parking in there also.
That's a zoning violation. That should be up to the building inspector if they're parking vehicles as a parking lot.
Okay.
It is a business there, so they do have a right to conduct the boatyard business. I imagine they're licensed for it if there's any licensing required. I don't really know.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
Okay, so do we have a motion by Ann Raponi, second by Vincent Camerata, to issue enforcement order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Order of conditions, right, Andy?
Okay, and sorry I had mixed up the agendas. I had done an agenda previously when I thought National Grid was going to be on it, but now I got my corrected agenda here. Should have taken you up first. Okay, this is a request of Irving Oil to withdraw water from Chelsea Creek, Chelsea River.
Yeah, they had to repair...
Introduce yourself, please.
I'm sorry, Timothy Briggs, GZA, Environmental. Irving had to repair one of their gasoline holding tanks, and following the repair, they're required to do a test, hydrostatic test. Same operation, I understand they've got permission from the commission to do in, I think it was 2010 and 2011. And it's very simple. They'll put a 8-inch PVC pipe into the creek at their dock and pump water into the tank, let it sit for the required amount of time. I'm not sure what that is. And then they'll release it when the test is done through their stormwater system, which includes oil water separator, before it gets discharged back to the creek. And this is they have a NIPD's permit from EPA for the facility, and this is included as one of their allowed regulated activities. So there's testing of the water going into the tank at the start of the test, and then 3 times, as they're discharging. Previous times they've done this in the past few years, there was no impact to the water. The tanks are clean before they do this. So the water was as clean going out as it was when it came in. And that's essentially the operation.
Any questions?
No, I just have a comment. I've reviewed the water withdrawal request, and I'm familiar with the procedure. And the NIPD stormwater discharge permit seems fine and accurate for this project. Confirmation email from Mass DEP and the applicability of the Water Management Act is appropriate, and Mass DEP policy on salt water withdrawals are all in compliance for this activity. That's my opinion.
Anybody else?
Well, Mr. Chairman, while I was reading up on it, I just have a question. Was there any damaged tanks there now?
I don't know the nature of the repairs or why they were required, and I don't know if there are any other tanks that are damaged.
So you'll find when will you find out if they're damaged? By the fluid leaking out of it? How would you find out about the damage?
I believe they monitor how much goes in and how much.
Okay, all right.
How much they measure coming out, and the tanks are all, they have secondary storage containers, basically bermed areas. So if there is leakage, it's visible.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Laval?
Curious question. What are the tanks made out of?
They're made out of steel.
They're steel?
Yes.
Not aluminum or fiberglass or anything like that?
I believe they're made out of steel, with a caveat that I was asked to come because I'm a wetlands person. The project manager for this facility that works for Irving for this facility couldn't make it tonight.
Thank you.
But my understanding is they're all steel.
Anybody else? Have a vote to approve? Motion?
I'll motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, you're all set. I'll send an email to Dave for that, inform him of the commission's approval.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Excuse me?
What's hydrostatic?
Hydrostatic is water pressure. It's water pressure.
It's a test.
Yeah. Like in your basement. If you got a leaky basement, the groundwater builds up on the outside of the basement, creating hydrostatic pressure. So even though you think concrete walls are tight, they're not. And that's why you'll see the water start to seep in.
Any update on the site visit, or I guess it was an unofficial site visit at Wave Avenue? Was it Wave Avenue? Where the pile
16 Wave?
Yeah.
Yeah, I spoke to her today. I put a letter in the mail today. I think I gave everybody a copy of it. Miss Linda Lee.
This is that. Okay.
Yes, and I'm going to have a site visit there 1 o'clock on Friday. You're welcome to join me. Just to see what she's doing. I talked to Ben DiCristoforo. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all right. I just wanted to see what she was doing. The building inspector, and what he told me they had done there, even though they're only permitted to replace windows and doors, they had dug out the foundation. That's what that pile of dirt was. It was a pile of dirt you remember 26 Wave Ave, Topolino? I think you were down there with us. Well, it was paved, it wasn't supposed to be paved, and we made them take it out. This is right next door to that. And they had a big pile of dirt there, and Joe had gotten a call, so we went down when we were down in the area and took a look. And so, you know, as I typically do, is contact the building inspector. In this case, it had a building permit, find out what's going on, what they're permitted for and why they haven't filed. You know, I thought they had imported the dirt to fill the backyard, but apparently they took it out of the cellar, which isn't allowed either to lower the cellar grade.
Okay. Good thing Joe received the call.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah, well, that's the way you get a lot of things.
At least we're made aware of these things happening. How can we act on them unless we know about them?
I know Dan's looked at the updated website. Got an email from him. I don't know if Jim has.
Dan always writes to me. I think you did. Did you send me an email, Dan?
The website, because I sent an email to Dan.
Yes,
Jim,
I did
and
receive
Ann,
something
who
on
I
the
know.
OOC. You defined the OOC program?
OOC.
OOC. I think I've got the letters back.
You described the enforcement action
Yes.
regulation.
Danny had asked for definition of that particular
Yes.
thing, and I did receive.
Well, what I gave you tonight, this afternoon, is sections out of the handbook from Mass Association of Conservation Commission that tells you how to go about doing enforcement. And it advises, as I did, informal enforcement at first, send a letter out, you know, call them, see if you can get them to cooperatively correct the situation. But
Oh, I
when
did
that
receive-
fails, that's when you start with the paperwork.
But I did receive the email telling me all that's written on that paper. It was emailed me. I think Danny sent it.
Yes, I had scanned it and I emailed that this morning.
Yes, you did, and I thank you for that.
Yes, just an easy way to do things.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn by member Joe
I
Lavelle.
second that.
I'll second the motion. Mr. Chair, oh, somebody else second that? I'm sorry.
I think Dan did, or did Jim? Dan, yeah, I thought it was Dan's voice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? What time we got? 5:02, not bad. Yeah, and I also put on there about new flood maps. The new flood maps are on the website.
Yes, I saw.